Hi Sachin,
Hey Dinkar, good morning.
how are you?
I'm doing fine.
I'm sorry I'm a little late and we had to wait for a few minutes.
No problem. It's I think the whole idea about doing this podcast about the topic which we are going to discuss today, it's okay to wait now. I was also collecting my thoughts.
Yeah, I mean things are moving so fast, right? We're all
Yes,
catching up, and it. I see so many of my friends like totally shaking with FOMO because there are people are trying so many things, and like every good new tech, there are so many startups popping up who seem to be doing everything and solving everything, and everyone is trying to figure out what's happening. And I think this whole topic that we're going to come to, uh, I think everyone should evaluate how their ways of working are going to change, and not necessarily from the point of view of risk, but point of view of exponential lift in capability. So go ahead and kickstart the discussion.
absolutely. So Dinkar, actually, you are not only late to podcast, you are also late to the topic. So, but we are we play in enterprise space, and we have been collecting our thoughts. It was not like we were completely hiding in the dark, but it's just that it takes that much time to come to consensus on a lot of things. The topic which we are going to talk about today is I requested Dinkar to explain us the impact of generative AI on the field where he is expert at, which is product management. And we were debating how it will impact. And we would like to take you through, obviously, this whole context is in enterprise setting. So I want audience to be mindful of that. And people, it will be very hard to imagine what is generative AI, but a couple of sentences on that would be is the casual definition I would like to give is this is the greatest sleight of hand mankind has played. It is nothing but predicting what word appears next, or what line of code which appears next, or what pixel will appear in the image. But it does in such a way that it is based on patterns which are learned from millions and billions of data points. So that's why if something has been right across these millions of articles, like a punctuation mark or a certain arrangement of words, what we call grammar, or certain brushstrokes, or certain patterns in coding, it will be able to learn. If it is in large quantity, it will learn that as a pattern which will happen again. And that is the technique behind learning this, extracting and putting it into a knowledge, and then generating. And that's why it is called generative AI. So you have experience with ChatGPT, you have experienced with, some of you might have experienced with GitHub Copilot, DALI, Midjourney, whatnot. But these are all coming under this generative AI. What specifically I requested Dinkar today is, and I have done multiple exercises myself, and Dinkar has been playing around with it for a month or two. Um, and we have been reading about it and seeing things before that. So I do believe it will change all aspects of software development, including how we gather requirement, how we research it, how we actually develop software and deploy software. But today I requested Dinkar to narrow down and only talk about the product manager's role, and how he can use these and augment himself with this AI. And does he think something will change? So Dinkar, my direct question to you, now that I'm not talking to audience, is how do you think, and what aspects of your job will get affected by AI? And the effect is not the word I'm talking from, negative impact, but where you will augment it meaningfully so that you will be able to achieve more.
I want to break it into two parts, right? One is how will it affect the things that I do, And the second thing is, how will it affect the process of product development that we follow, right? So first is, how will it affect me? And I see that, uh, and as I'm talking to more and more people, right, it kind of, the discussions have kind of taken me into this direction, that I want to describe how it will affect my ways of working in form of a mental model, where I'm now encountering three new personas in my day-to-day life. The first persona is of a digital assistant. Now,
Yeah.
but the quality of this digital assistant is, while this digital assistant is very smart, maybe is a grad in English or history, but does not really get product management. So
Hmm.
they can get things for me, they can figure out things for me, they can write up stuff for me. But because they don't really get product management, I cannot just rely on them. So I have to give them very clear instructions on what I want. I have to inspect their mm, output work product and ensure that it's still making sense, right? So I'll give you, example, and lot of tasks of a product manager leads to artifacts, right?
Hmm.
Artifacts could be a product vision document, a product requirement document, epics for development teams. And if someone is working very closely with a development team, they might even be writing stories for them. User documents, email for marketing, so which highlights some very interesting aspect about the product, which they will go and then do spam campaigns,
Right.
right? Uh, Working with the copywriter for working with the supporting, right? So a lot of activities of a product manager ends up in an artifact.
Hmm.
And generative AI is good at what? Creating artifacts. So now you have a digital assistant who can create version 0.1 of all the artifacts. And for you, what it does is that you need to have that caution in your mind that this
Right.
is grad in history or English, does not really get products or product management. So while they have done an awesome job, I need to give them clear instructions of what I really wanted. And even with that, I'll have to go and edit stuff. So those people who love to look at something and then say what is right or wrong thrive in this. And what product management, the whole concept of prototyping tells us that humans are very good at pointing out what's good and what's wrong versus creating something from new. So this will actually open up the field of product management to so many people, right, who earlier were hesitant because they didn't know how to go from 0 to 1. They didn't know how to write that first line. They didn't know how to write that first line of the user document. What's the structure of a user document? There's a blog I wrote on what a structure of a manual, because someone was just so stuck at that point, like, where do I start? What is the table of content? And all I did in that blog was write down the table of content. And now this person kind of went off and did whatever they wanted to do, right? So now suddenly these people who were having these blocks are going to thrive in product management because there's a digital assistant who's going to do this for you, right? That's the first mental model we should
But
go.
Dinkar, I would like to like probe you a little bit on the
Yeah.
aspect which you talked about. Like they don't get, like the AI wouldn't get what a product manager thinks. So, and I agree to that, but I would like to just break it for the purposes of clarity. There are certain aspects of I played with it. I asked, okay, here is a application which I want to do and how it will look, and it comes up with a very good outline of that. If I say I want to create a travel application with something, and it's a mobile app, and then I want to do it, it gives you very clear idea. In fact, I created a problem statement of I want to create a flight booking application for elderly people.
Hmm.
I have never seen this in my life, this problem statement. And I gave it to Chat GPT, and it said, oh, um, this is how our website will look like. I said, give me use cases. And it said, our website is targeted towards elderly people. And We use a highly accessible design, large fonts, no multiple information on single page. We always prefer certain, we default to certain things, for example, wheelchair access and whatnot. So, and I thought it was pretty innovative in that sense. Now, assuming this is the example and context which I'm talking about, for a person like me who is just a technologist, it gave me pretty good starting point, I would say. Now, where does a product manager, good product manager, actually does their magic, which changes this from just run of the mill solution to something good?
Right. So I think, and I want to go a little deeper into that also, that Sachin, you did not realize that you are not a product manager, but there was a tool that kind of, helped you, or, kind of blur that line.
Correct.
So, and we should discuss that how I think in future, um, uh, the best developers would actually be very good analysts or product managers. The product managers would
Wow.
be best developers because they would know how to instruct. Because what is requirements writing, what is story writing, what is acceptance criteria writing, what is writing your QA acceptance criteria, right? That's what typical product manager does, and that is what is given to the developer. Now, if you're doing this job very well, you have actually become a developer, a seniorish developer who will generate the whole code, and then that will go to the tech lead who will say, okay, these are the things you have missed. This is, these are the paradigm, and who can fix that code again. The whole world is seems to be moving towards where you don't need to start from scratch. You can not even start from version 0.1. You can actually start from version 0.8, which is like a few steps ready from you're the first version, right? So in some way, you have taken steps towards that. You went from your technical side into product management side, and I will go from product management side into technical side.
So, do you think there will be a Proma Dev Ops kind of role, like Proma DevOps?
Yeah, and the obviously the name would change, right? All of us would be like, how good are we at prompting people, right? How good are we at whispering in the background for someone who's doing something, right? How good
But
a mentor we are.
sorry to interrupt, Dinkar, but I do want to call out one thing. There is also the imitation will actually increase, because if you think about a lot of people like me, if they started playing this role of Proma, then they will be able to create artifacts which are just good enough, better than average, I would say, or average. But then, first of all, the bar of average will actually grow. That is inevitable now. But these people who create these really awesome products and product thinking, it is not only getting a problem statement and marrying that to a solution. I think that is the risk which I see here of trivializing the
Uh,
responsibilities.
I wouldn't say trivializing, and I wouldn't say what I want. How I see it is, it will lead to some kind of standardization.
Okay.
Without realizing, because what is going to happen is a lot of the output that will get generated, as you said, right? It is kind of a very high abstraction and consolidation of so many
Hmm.
knowledge, and there is a pattern. That pattern will suddenly become very simple, concise, and accessible to everyone. Everyone starts following it, and there would be standardization. Now, standardization, as you said, has its pros and cons. One, standardization immediately raises the level to a
Correct.
standard level. So everyone will have that minimum standard, right? Now, it reminds me of Craigslist, right? Craigslist was not to be the best UI or the best. They wanted to be sufficiently good, sufficiently useful for sufficient large number of people, and there were few employees who were making a lot of money. They were not like hundreds of millions of dollars, but they were making enough $1 million to live a comfortable life with less stress, less work, no transformation headache, no UI refresh headache, no change of libraries and tech headache. So there are a lot of problem statements, Sachin, that really need standardization, because that will bring a level of uniform experience and quality, right? And then there is always a place where innovation is needed, jumping is needed to the next level, and there things will happen and people will come into picture, innovation will happen. It's not that innovation is going to die, but all the places where because of lack of standardization there is bad experience or even absence of any solution, suddenly they will thrive. So you're right, in some way there will be some standardization. Standardization has pros and cons. Those will apply, but I think there will still be space for innovation. Um, and then stepping back, we did a little bit of going back the stack. We had a little bit of discussion on, the roles blurring and it giving that capability. And before that, I was talking about the mental models, right? So first mental model is said, think that now you have a digital assistant who's really smart, but it's not from your field, so it doesn't get the nuances of your field. So you have to give nice instructions and you have to cross check, right? And the second one is, let's say you have a persona of now of a customer also.
Got it.
Right. And you can go and talk to this customer anytime. The customer is very keen, right? But not really interested in thinking too much to give you responses. They'll kind of tell you the first thing that comes to their mind. They don't expect this customer to do deep thinking for you and give you feedback. So these are the scenarios where, for example, let's say you want a lot of, feedback from someone, right? Hey, how are you going to react to this? And the reason and in all the three personas that are listed, right, these are good personas, but they will be little off. And that's very important to keep remembering, that whatever you get from generative technology will be little off, because ultimately at some point, a lot of people use the word, you don't know when, generative AI is being factual, when it's being delusional, when it is just giving you a good answer, or when it is giving you the right answer, right? So it might be a customer who wants to, is very keen to help you, may actually end up telling what you want to hear rather than what it was, right? So there is going to be a new use of this technology where product managers will actually use it to simulate a customer, get their feedback. But always remembering that this customer is little off, is keen, but it's not really very emotionally invested in giving you correct feedback. They may tell you some answer, which mostly would be right, but you cannot totally rely on them, right? So that's the third persona that I want people to have in mind is of a research assistant. Right? Now you have a research assistant, but the thing which is off about this research assistant is that your research assistant is very academic. So you ask a question and they'll find out the academic answer for it. And what I mean is that their response may not be very relevant to you, may not be to the point of what you expected, may be very, this paper may not have that last mile analysis that a research analyst does, that here is the research and this is how it matters to us. So that last mile, 0.8%, version 0.8, they will give to you. And that last two of making the connection, dropping and picking what has come back to you will still be done by you. So I think what I've started telling people is, in generative AI, chat GPT, and any, you got three new people helping you, and their personas is of a digital assistant, a digital researcher, and a customer, who are really good, but they're little off. So you have to be very clear with their instructions, and you have to cross-check what they're telling you. So that's part one. Going back the stack, I said that we had two things. Part one, how it will affect my ways of working, and the part two was how it may affect the way products are being built. But before we dive into that, did you want to catch up on some thoughts you had or wanted to highlight something?
Dinkar, let's do the part two in second episode, but let's go deeper into first section itself. And then towards the end, you just give glimpse of what the part 2 looks like, so that people know what to expect from the second episode. The reason why I want to deeper dive on this one is there are so many questions which are popping in my mind about how it will impact. So I'll start with couple. The first thing is, these three personas you talked about are very critical. A persona of a research assistant, a persona of a customer. But then you don't need, you know that these are a little bit off. You know, these guys are going to give you some answers which are going to be 60%, 70%. But do you believe that there is a huge value before even coming to a customer's discussion? Let's say that you got a problem statement and you are now meeting a customer. Are there any things you can do by using these three personas, like a copywriter or assistant, customer, as well as a researcher, before you jump into this whole head first? How you will augment these three roles to yourself so that you will be productive? Are there any ways in which you will be able to take a jump start from these tools?
And that actually is a part two,
Oh,
how the flow will change, right? And let's do a little bit of
yeah,
discussion on that also, right? So today, the way software is being developed, an idea goes from ideation into, it happens in a certain way because of the tools that are available to us and the restrictions that are around us, right? Now, essentially, what are those restrictions, right? And let's first come from that side. The first restriction is that writing software is expensive. Writing software is full of issues and bugs,
yeah,
right? Third, uh, software, the whole process of writing software takes time. And what that may lead to is that we may learn something little far ahead of time that we could have learned upfront, right? In order to overcome all these things, people started creating things. So right from the ideation, right? Now, earlier, I don't know when, but that mystical earlier or mythical earlier, someone would create a product, take it to the market, and then see, hey, market, what is the value coming out of it? Do you want to pay something for it? Who do you want to buy it? Who does? People used to make something, go to the market, see what is the response to it, come back, remake it or dump it, right?
right.
Whole thing got changed. In the beginning, let's think of a business model. The first thing you do after an idea is, let's think of the business model, right? Because it's very expensive to go and do all the research and all that. So then the whole thing was, okay, I have created a business model, let me validate it. Now, how would you validate earlier? You know that, you know what, and I want to do a business in, let's say, handicrafts, right? So what I used to do in olden days, mythical or I don't know, real, probably real also, I would go to that bazaar where that kind of handicraft is very popular. I'll go sit there, I'll notice what kind of deals are happening, I'll figure out that what handicraft will sell. I'll come back, make the whole thing and show it to people and start selling it, right? So that's how people figured out the business model. We have done that. Now, I cannot build something because it's very expensive. So what people will, jewelry designers will do, they'll create a design of a jewelry, right? Or people will make these small models. A few months back, I had gone to Hampi, and this is it's a
Yeah,
very famous site in Karnataka, and there's a big temple there, very old temple. And one of the things that guide shows is that before they build the whole temple, they build this small model of the temple to get king's blessing or approval, right? It's
the
not prototype.
prototype. Yeah,
It's doing that, right? People do, because it's very expensive to make, and king
correct.
will say, I don't like this design, like start over again or something, right? And so suddenly, Sachin, what the thing, the thought that I'm coming to is that what is going to be expensive and what is going to be cheap is changing.
Right.
So maybe writing software and creating a version 0.5 of that, which is sufficiently working, which is sufficiently, maybe will immediately, because ideation is cheap now, business model research is cheap now, creating that half working software is very cheap now. Probably I'll skip all of that, and I will everywhere start with this semi-working prototype, not low-fi prototype, which is like, clickable PDFs or something, not hi-fi prototype, which is a piece of working software which has backend data connection, some kind of login, some kind of security authentication. So we're talking in
Right.
enterprise environment, right? Nothing cannot go out without
Absolutely.
safety and protection and infosec. But maybe now there is this halfway in between. I can go, and my proposal to a customer is not going to be a PPT, we should do this, and this is this. And this is what customers are saying about it. This is what are doing. So what has become cheap and what has become expensive now? What has become cheap for me is to create something like that. What has become expensive for me is now what I have created. 50 or 20 other startups and other similar companies are going to sit in front of the client, and because of standardization, almost all of us will have the similar thing, which we all created using the same tool, created from the same large language model, fed on the same information. Now we'll have to, what will become expensive is what that 0.1 0.2% that we bring in, right? So I think before we go and jump that, make predictions how things will change, I think we need to do an analysis of what will become cheaper, which was earlier very expensive, and what might become very expensive, which earlier was very cheap. And this new cost equilibrium will now tell us that what we will do beforehand and what we'll do later.
That's a that's a phenomenal insight, to be very honest with you. I have drawn from this is the way to look at it is not, okay, what part of my responsibilities are being impacted by this, but the cost equation changes. And the cost equation changes, that means you will be changing your ways of working to adapt to those new reality.
The focus. Now, what should I focus on?
Absolutely. And this is great point, Dinkar. Now, I think you have also talked about the three personas and how they impact you, which is good. There is the other side, which I think we are coming upon our time, but I think when we are technologists, we think about these new technologies and suddenly our imagination goes wild. One missing part of all this equation is a product manager is doing all of this in context of two roles. One is actual customer, who is not one customer, right? It's a class of people who are representing an organization, unit.
Customer segment. Yeah.
Correct. And second is, similarly, user is not one user. It is a bouquet of personas. Yeah. And these two things are equally complex. And you cannot go just because now you can go faster on one dimension. And this is where I would like to delve a little bit deeper on how the consensus driven will happen now. Because I think when earlier you used to, I have seen you working many times, and you used to basically bring one of the very key responsibility of a product manager is to sell that idea and drive a consensus among group of people who have very wild expectations. Some people have very conservative expectations, some have very progressive expectations. But then it's also a human, because as long as there are going to be humans in this whole loop, that somebody's paying who is human and then somebody is buying who is a human, I think we need to talk about it. And I would like to know from you how that consensus process will impact. The user research, you touched upon it a little bit, but do you think there will be some sort of change in that consensus driving? And it is also psychological, and that's what I'm wondering is, you give me that if I was the king and in that World Heritage Site of Hampi, you showed me this small model, I might also think that you are already married to this design. I wanted a different looking temple.
Yeah.
But then that, how much is too much? How much like prototyping is too much? Now I can create a good enough looking app, which is prototype, as you mentioned, stripped down version of things, and does the consensus process will change? And that is something which I am very interested from knowing you, how it will change. So,
Yeah, I
but
think,
to, for
uh,
yeah,
yeah, that's a very good topic for the next one. But I do want to again remind, right, the thing in the back of my mind, the algorithm in the back of my mind is that the things which were expensive will become cheap. The things which were cheap will may become very expensive. And in this equilibrium, right, so the whole idea, the cost used to impose some discipline, right?
correct,
It's very even though it's cheaper to do lo-fi prototype, but it takes time, right? So at people used to stop at certain point and say that this is good enough, or now let's, disagree but commit, because these were not. Now imagine that the king had a magic capability and could generate millions of these temples, right? And it almost sounds to me like those, I don't know if there is a parable like that, but these are the stories of king who could imagine any model of a temple, and a small prototype used to be there. And then king said, okay, let me try another day, let me try third day, because there's no cost involved, it's really cheap, right? Let me try another, let me try another. And one day the king dies, and the whole kingdom, people don't have place to live, or the whole kingdom is full of these
just
mini
prototypes.
types, right? Because he couldn't make the mind. And that is so much possible, because look at it, there is no cost to the king for doing this, right? And where do you stop? And what this will mean, that new rules, new restrictions will emerge. And that is what I'm thinking about. I'm talking to people, and I'm like anyone, I'm curiously watching that what new rules will emerge, where at some point someone will say enough, right? What are those new costs, what are those new restrictions? And that is why a lot of people, it's like when books were, right, people, oh, every book is a work of art. We write something, we ensure there's no, and if someone wants a book, we know that they really want it because they paid for this book, right? Suddenly if the book is getting published, is getting printed, which may end up in a dumpster because it got printed and nobody wanted it, right? At some point it became so cheap that the world got flooded with all this stuff. There was
Right,
huge, but at new costs started emerging, right? And new restrictions started emerging, which at some point kind of brought it back. And while a lot of people are thinking, oh my god, now how will any decision being made, how will anything ever stop, will we just keep? And that was one of the things actually I wanted to talk, is at some point the discipline that a product manager will have to bring in is not to make it about the tool and the journey. Like, chat gpt is very addictive. I would, you, Sachin, would never have had the inclination, because of the cost of it, and because of, the ramp up time of it, to start imagining that, can I create a travel app for a elderly? Can
yeah,
I write down the requirements? Can I write the use cases? You wouldn't have done it because it was a huge cost on you, on your time and bandwidth, right? Now you have this and you're going to go crazy, right? And I
right,
know all of us are going crazy, we're imagining awesome things, and we're just like, but what we are not realizing is that an emergence of a cost has come, right? At some point, someone will have to, it, there will be clear articulation of that. I don't know what that is, but the new cost will get imposed, where we'll say, okay, we cannot, and my point is, to answer your question, go back, is, I don't think it will be still it would be a problem. The rules of the rubrics of that consensus will change, but
Yeah,
something will be there. It's not going to be a lawless, it's not where Newton's law that if an idea is rolling, it will keep on rolling. There
yeah.
will be some resistance, there will be some constraint at some point. That idea will stop rolling into something that needs to be taken forward and built.
Absolutely.
A
On
little
that,
roundabout, but couldn't resist. Yeah.
absolutely. On that note, Dinkar, thank you so much for opening up to this topic. It's complex. And next time, let's dive deeper onto the consensus process, how it actually impacts the other side of the table, who are consumers and customers. I have few thoughts and questions which are popping in my mind, but I'll reserve it for the next time. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.